Thank you, Professor Christian, for inviting me. And of course, this is a great experience of being with my students from the very first time, my eighth, ninth semester students. And remember that I was your first teacher. This is going to be probably the last time that you're going to listen to me, right? But okay, I'm gonna try to make an effort in order to explain because there is a lot of information related to this project. Okay, and basically the name of this research project is Between Knowledge and Emotion, a critical reading of the discourse on socio-emotional education in recent Colombian educational laws. Okay, the agenda that I propose has to do with the statement of the problem, research question and objectives, the state of the art, theoretical and legal framework, research design, and conclusions. Okay, I would like to highlight some of the most important aspects which compose the statement of the problem for this research project. The first one has to do with its understanding how the legislative reforms and exercise and educational control. And of course, we have different laws, education laws, but we have to understand that they are not only legal frameworks, but they also impose specific cultural and pedagogical norms whose perspectives and values are prioritized in education. So the laws are not only regulating different social aspects in our society, but also there are some discourses and there are some power relationships behind it. So that is precisely one of the aspects that critical discourse analysis tries to unveil. Another aspect of the statement of the problem has to do with the symbolic power of legal norms. So in this case, it's important to, of course, wonder or make questions about what is considered acceptable knowledge and behavior in schools. And in this case, and how those knowledge, because it's controlling behavior, can also limit the diverse educational approaches. So that's why as teachers, as students, we had to pay attention about those discourses that are coming to our schools, but not all we try to criticize them. So we accept them, but without a critical eye. So this is the invitation. The third element of the statement of the problem has to do with embedded inequalities. This is related to inadvertently perpetuate some educational laws, or most of them, inadvertently perpetuate social hierarchies and inequalities, embedding dominant conceptions of teaching, learning, and student development. Yeah, and is one of the aspects that we had to pay attention, and we had to be focused on it, because we all know that education is maybe the first step to reproduce the social inequalities in our Colombian society, but also in the Latin American societies. Let's continue, please. Okay, the fourth element is control through discourse. The critical discourse analysis is proposing that there are different mechanisms of social control, and in this case, as teachers, as educators, we had to think about, okay, what educators can teach and how students are expected to learn, no? So we have different norms, different legal frameworks, but they try to tell us the way we had to teach, what we had to teach, and sometimes we accept those realities without criticizing them, and this is the invitation of critical discourse analysis. Another element of the statement of the problem is gaps and silences in policies. There are implicit assumptions, omissions, and silences respect or regarding some social realities, and in this case, students and teachers' voices may be marginalized or overlooked, right? And the sixth aspect of the state of the problem has to do with challenges for pedagogical autonomy, and of course, there is a legislation, and it's the way how we can understand how those or how the legislation constrain teachers' professional autonomy and limit opportunities for innovative or context-specific pedagogical practices. That's why in some classes what I invite my students is we had to create our own method for teaching. Of course, we have studied different methods or different pedagogies, but we as professionals, we had to construct our own projects. Okay, so in this, under this context, the research question is, how do Colombia socio-emotional laws construct discourses on education, inclusion, and student well-being, and what effects of power do they generate within the Colombian educational system? So this is a study which is framed by the critical discourse analysis, right? And related to this question, the general objective is analyze how these legal texts construct subjectivities, articulate power relations, reproduce educational discourses with national and global reach. The specific objectives I propose two. The first one is conduct a textual and interdiscursive analysis of legislative texts combining the identification of discursive formations with the evaluation of the power and knowledge that emerge from normative discourses. And the second is analyze these four laws as interrelated discourses devices, examining not only their content, but also the silences, omissions, and discursive strategies that reproduce or challenge power structures within the Colombian educational context. And in this exercise, what I did was analyzing the latest four laws that regulate socio-emotional education in our country, Colombia, right? And we know that the discourse of socio-emotional education is very common today, but we accept that discourse as it was working well. But there are some micro discourses and different power relationships behind them that we had to unveil in this study. Okay, at the state of the art, of course, in this exercise, what I tried to put was I was writing and I was presenting the four laws which were analyzed, Ley 202 of 2024, Ley 23A3 of 2024, Law 2414 of 2024, and Law 2491 of 2025. Okay, these four laws are related to different focus on socio-emotional education. The first one is focused on emotional education. The second one, socio-emotional education with equity and diversity. The third one is school coexistence and conflict mitigation. And the fourth one, socio-emotional competencies. Of course, and each one of those have some specific objectives, but what I would like to highlight or to clarify now is in regarding the first one, what I have seen is that is also focused on individual well-being, limited attention to institutional structures, phrase emotion competencies as normative requirement students. It's like for being a good student, and quotation marks, we must have socio-emotional competencies. So I mean, it's not something that we can live from our own lives. It's like a requirement, an institutional requirement. Regarding the second one, okay, what I can outline is global frameworks. Most of the education laws are related to global frameworks from different international institutions, you know, as the United Nations or economic institutions. And what happens with those facts is that they reproduce international agendas detached from local and socio-cultural realities. Remember what Kumar Abadiero is proposing, that we had to take into account the local context for constructing our own curriculum. The third one, what I have seen is how the third law reinforces discipline and social control. You know, so what is behind this social emotional framework? It's a great effort to control our behavior at school and in different scenarios. And this is very close to Michel Foucault is proposing about the control. Foucault and Bourdieu are proposing about the control of bodies and the control of human life within the institutions, right? And regarding the fourth one, okay, presents gaps in resources and mechanisms for implementation. These laws sound great, and there are wonderful discourses, but there are no specific strategies how institutions or how the state or how local communities can, carry on those laws. There are no resources or there are no different conditions which allow the institutions and communities to, of course, exercise or carry on those laws or what those laws propose. Okay, here we have the theoretical framework based on critical discourse analysis, and what I did was classifying, between three elements: core perspective, three main branches, and an integrative node. Regarding the theoretical perspective, what I used was interdisciplinary approaches, because critical discourse analysis is an interdisciplinary approach. And here we have, in this research project, authors such as Fairclough, Van Dijk, Wallach, and in this case, the main assumptions: language as social practice, how language produces power and how language produces control and legitimation, discursive constructions shaping meaning, subjects, and power relationships, so how the discourse is performative and constructs subjectivities and the identities. And other branches, so we have, Jagger. Jagger was the author and the academic person that I took into account for doing this research. He's proposing a very, very interesting platform for doing critical discourse analysis. In this case, tests must be analyzed in relation to other tests. This is what in linguistics is known as intertextuality or interdiscursivity, and laws as discursive devices, Foucaultian perspectives. The second one, discourse on power. Discourse produces subjects and defines fields of action. Institutional language, that promote a language which is institutionalized, and this is proposed by Bourdieu, of course. Then we have the role of global policies and local contexts, the influence of international frameworks, and concepts, how criticizing and of course concepts like inclusion, equity, participation as anti-signifiers. They look great, but we don't know exactly how they can change or how can change our social reality. This was the corpus, because in CDA we had to propose a corpus that should not be very long, because this is very, very specific. These were the laws that I was analyzing. Michelle, can you please move on to the following one? Thank you. This is this is very important, because this is the platform that Jagger is proposing for analyzing discourses, and in this case, these laws. And he proposed three elements: textual analysis, intertextual and interdiscursive analysis, and analysis of power effects. The first category has to do with identifying linguistic categories, semantic frames, metaphors, and nominalization. So this is linguistic. It's understanding how the institutions and the power and the groups which exercise power regulate the language for controlling and for having power. The second one, intertextual and interdiscursive analysis. It has to do with recognizing how a text connects with other discourses. And analysis of power effects, how discourses shape social practices, hierarchies, and subjects. This is just the elements for each one of those three elements. Textual and linguistic analysis is composed by analyzing nominalizations, metaphors, legitimization strategies, and social actors. The second aspect proposed by Jagger has to do with intertextual and interdiscursive analysis, and this is composed by internal and external and historical elements. I don't have enough time to explain each one of those, but okay. The third element, analysis of power effects, and this is composed by analyzing in the discourses educational subjectivities, pedagogical practices, and power relations. This is a matrix analysis. Of course, so I was applying the three elements proposed by Jagger for each one of those laws, and this was the result. So here we could find different, in terms of critical discourse analysis, you had to play with two elements. So linguistic structures and discursive strategies. And was the information that I was, that I found, of course. So what's my time? Just 3 minutes. Okay, unfortunately I could not explain each one of these elements, but maybe in another opportunity. Okay, this was the second matrix for the second law. Then the third one. Okay, and let's continue. Okay, this was the analysis, right? Okay, and finally, I just want to finish with the conclusions. Because this was a research project which has already done, okay? And the conclusions, the first one, these educational laws are discursive tools which shape social realities, subjectivities, and power relations within schools. This is an invitation to think about the laws which are created within a society. We could never accept the laws. So we had to accept the laws, of course, but we had to criticize them and thinking what were the interests behind those laws. Okay. The second one, okay, the emphasis on emotional education, and everybody feels that emotional education is the best thing we need for improving our social relationships. But this study is demonstrating how the discourse of emotional education is based on state discourses as a determining of both institutional practices and the ways teachers and students are expected to be. So what they regulate and these laws is not an invitation for having a better social relationship. It's an invitation to foster a specific way of behavior in the human being. And this is something very complex. The third one, the strong alignment within international frameworks, subordinating local educational priorities to global standards. As a country, we haven't autonomy for creating our own education laws because there are some economic and political institutions and they tell us what we have to do in our country and how the way we can conduct education. The fourth one, schools are increasingly represented as sites for emotional management and disciplinary control, which is what Bourdieu and Foucault were proposing, from academic institutions toward state-run therapeutic spaces. So the school as the new therapeutic space, But this looks good. But what is the therapeutic space? Maybe what Foucault was describing in his studies on hospital and institutions of control. This is what we had to analyze. Number 5, there is a tension exists between state-mandated centralism and nominal community participation. For making these laws, communities were not included. So these laws were created for other actors from the state and international actors, but the communities do not have any role. And of course, this limits genuine decision-making power at the local level. And there were only 5. There were not 6 conclusions. Okay. This was just a summary of what I had done during this research project, and my invitation is that you can also be interested in working with critical discourse analysis because it's